The projector hums like an ICU machine as the slide clicks to life. A time-stamped photo of my wife in a white patient gown straddling a man wearing a stethoscope. The hospital boardroom goes silent except for someone stirring a paper cup of drip coffee like they're trying to save a drowning sugar cube. Exhibit A, I say, as professionally as a man whose American dream just got repossessed can manage. The chief medical officer clears his throat, the lawyer in a navy suit shifts his legal pad, and the doctor, Dr. Good Genes, the suburban legend of longevity and holistic wellness, can't decide whether to smirk or faint. It was medical advice, my wife says, eyes dry as the California hills in August, voice steady like she's telling a barista to make it oat. The words sound gentle until you hear them next to the click-click of evidence. Hotel receipts rebranded as off-site consultations. Late-night vitamin infusions done in cash. A calendar full of follow-ups that follow the phases of the moon more than any treatment protocol. When I say cheating wife, the lawyer instinctively writes it down like a proper noun. This is how American scandal is born, not with torches but with a slideshow and a compliance officer who keeps saying, for the record, "You should know I didn't come here to be noble. I came for revenge, clean, court-approved revenge. Because the thing about betrayal is it wants witnesses, and my whole family became collateral. Our son went from Little League to trust issues. Our daughter started Googling, what is infidelity between algebra problems? The dog stopped sleeping at the foot of our bed and camped by the door like a TSA agent. In the boardroom, I talk about insurance codes like a prosecutor on a true crime podcast. Code 9925, extended visit. Code 96365, IV infusion. Code 69, well, the manual doesn't have that one, but their imagination did. The doctor's attorneys try to float a conspiracy where the photos are deepfakes, the receipts are misattributed, and my Ring camera is a pawn of big tech jealous of the healing arts. I almost laugh. It would be funny if my life weren't the punchline. Rewind. The first symptom was cultural. Backyard barbecues where my wife stopped eating burgers because inflammation started saying toxic love like it was a food group, and switched from Chardonnay to something called adaptogenic elixir that tasted like regret. She met the doctor at a charity 5K that I sponsored through my HVAC company. He gave a speech about cellular truth. She clapped like he'd cured rent. Soon she was prioritizing self, which is American for I bought a new identity at Target. She subscribed to a monthly IV drip service where they come to your house with a rolling suitcase like a flight attendant and hook you up to a bag of alphabet soup. When I asked why the bills were higher than a Lake Tahoe Airbnb, she said, "Good health is priceless." When I pointed to the line item labeled discretionary, she said that's the price. Click, next slide. A screenshot of his text. Come by after hours. More, medical advice. The board's legal counsel shifts again because words have grooves and some grooves lead to hotel elevators. My wife says the photos are doctored and the irony sprains its ankle trying to keep up. "You're humiliating me," she adds, like humiliation is a choice I made at Costco. I tell the room how I learned to track patterns, mileage logs, Starbucks punch cards from the cafe next to his office, an Excel sheet color-coded in Betrayal. In another country, maybe I'd duel him at dawn. In America, we do discovery. We subpoena. We let a projector do the stabbing. And while the room holds its breath, I do the most American thing I can think of. I pitch the narrative. I offer the board a version where this is not just one doctor with boundary issues. It's a small-town conspiracy, a wellness industrial complex, a system that invoices compassion at $350 per hour and calls infidelity somatic alignment. I tell them it's the same story as all our stories, a family trying to outrun despair with subscriptions. We bought meal kits for the marriage, meditation apps for the resentment, Peloton for the silence. None of it stopped the cheating. The only thing that did was truth, printed and stapled. The lawyer finally asks whether I'm seeking damages or closure. Both, I say, because I'm American. I like my pain monetized and my heartbreak branded. The board agrees to investigate. The doctor pretends to be relieved. My wife adjusts her blazer like a senator. I turn off the projector. That's where the future begins. For now, rewind again. I'm going to show you how all of this started and why medical advice became our household's most radioactive phrase since we need to talk. Before the doctor, our marriage was average in a way you could set your watch to. Costco runs every other Saturday, yard work on Sundays, an annual photo by the pumpkin patch where our smiles looked like tax deductions. If love is a set of American holidays, we got through most of them intact. The shift began as satire. My wife started archiving our pantry like it was a crime scene for carbs, held a funeral for white flour, and replaced our toaster with a juicer that sounded like a small plane. She said we were living in a culture of slow betrayal, poisons in plastics, micro-betrayals in processed food, infidelity baked into the very shape of the American day. I wanted to argue, but betrayal is a large word, and arguing with it makes you look guilty. Enter Dr. Good Genes. He had the haircut of a minor television actor and the jawline of a settlement check. His practice sat between a cryotherapy bar and a boutique that sold expensive water. He called himself a longevity physician, which in plain English means he turned the human desire not to die into an aesthetic. On the first visit, he told my wife, "Your cells have a story they're trying to tell you," and she came home saying our marriage needed a rebrand. He recommended sauna therapy, ice baths, collagen, breathwork, red light panels, and a new kind of intimacy where she was intimate with herself, her truth, and, as a technicality, sometimes him. I tried to play along. I learned words like cortisol and polyphenols. I learned that toxicity had moved from chemicals to people, and I was on a watch list. She started using phrases like emotional labor at the breakfast table and cheating to describe me eating a glazed donut. It was parody until it wasn't. The appointments multiplied. Tuesdays for lymphatic drainage, Thursdays for IVs, weekends for retreats that looked suspiciously like spa days with a coursework component. The invoices read like a religious text for the Church of Self. When I raised the possibility of infidelity, she said I was addicted to suspicion, that men fear women's autonomy because it threatens their control. I considered hiring a philosopher. I hired a private investigator. The PI wasn't what I expected. She was an ex-theater major who treated surveillance like improv. She said wellness clinics were the new frontier of marital drama. You'd be amazed what gets categorized as somatic release. She followed my wife's Prius like a polite ghost and sent me a dossier with timestamps, angles, and a spreadsheet that could win at trial. Hotels, conference rooms, a Pilates studio that moonlighted as a consultation suite. One photo I can't unsee. My wife's wedding ring on a lanyard next to the doctor's ID badge, two circles that vowed different kinds of permanence. Meanwhile, our kids acted out the slow-motion collapse. Our daughter started a club at school called Truthers, which wasn't conspiracy so much as survival. Kids of divorce curating facts like playlists. Our son refused to go to the clinic when he had a sprained wrist, muttering something about no more medical advice. At Thanksgiving, my mother asked if we'd tried church, and my wife said community is a colonial construct, which made my mother go quiet and pass the green bean casserole like a ceasefire. As the evidence mounted, the town contributed its own chorus. Barb from the HOA whispered that the doctor had a revolving door of wellness confidants. The high school football coach said half his players' moms glowed in the same eerie way. On Yelp, I found 5-star reviews written in a tone of post-coital enlightenment. "He really listens," one said. "I feel seen," another wrote, and I thought, of course you feel seen. You're nude under a heat lamp. My wife accused me of stalking. I said the truth was doing long division and I was just checking the math. She called me vindictive. I said the American word was revenge and it's constitutional. She packed a weekender bag with a silk robe and a portable diffuser and told me to stop being toxic. I told her toxic love begins with euphemisms and ends with someone changing the Wi-Fi password. The night before I followed her, we looked like a normal couple folding laundry, except every t-shirt felt like Exhibit A. She scrolled Instagram wellness reels while I scrolled the PI's updates. We lay in the same bed like two people waiting for different flights. She turned off the lamp and said, "You need to trust the process." I stared at the ceiling fan, counting blades like seconds, thinking how America sells processes for everything: grief, joy, marriage, divorce, and how every process ends with an invoice. Call it paranoia, but the night I decided to tail them, the sky over our suburb looked like a studio lot. Clean, lit, forgettable. My borrowed Corolla hummed like a confession booth. The Prius turned into the medical plaza at 8:41 p.m., which is not a standard hour for anything except infidelity or dental emergencies. I parked behind a landscaping truck and watched my wife use the back entrance, the one meant for deliveries and other discreet commodities. The doctor arrived 3 minutes later wearing scrubs that made him look like a superhero who lost his cape. I took a breath that wanted to last a year. Here's where the conspiracy arrives wearing a lab coat. Through careful research, snooping, I'd learned that his clinic leased space after hours to a shell LLC called Somatic Horizons. The landlord said they hosted private wellness intensives, which translates in the suburban dialect to people who need plausible deniability measured in LED lumens. The LLC's billing portal accepted HSA cards under a category labeled lifestyle care. That's what America calls cheating when it wants the tax advantage. I slipped inside with the cleaners at 9 sharp, a roll of garbage bags in my hand, like a passport. The place smelled like eucalyptus and electricity. The consultation room had 2 chairs, a massage table, and a neon sign that said, "Breathe in a font," so soothing I wanted to sue it. Through the thin wall came murmurs. Her laugh I hadn't heard in months. His voice in that register doctors use when they say, "You're safe." My heart pounded the way it did at our wedding when I promised for better or worse, and I realized there should have been a clause for unless worse calls itself therapy. I pressed my phone camera against the crack of the door, and the frame filled itself like a guilty computer. Hand on shoulder, lips on temple, a choreography no medical school teaches. I stepped in without knocking because I'm American, and sometimes we kick doors. "Medical advice?" I asked the air. They jumped like teenagers at a curfew check. My wife rushed to the script. "You don't understand." The doctor lifted his hands as if to show they were empty when they very recently were not. I put the PI's photos on the counter, then the text printouts, then the receipt for a wellness retreat that looked a lot like a weekend at a resort with room service. The word cheating wife fell out of my mouth with a calm I didn't recognize. He said we were in crisis and crisis required compassion. I said crisis was billable, apparently. My wife pivoted to a monologue about betrayal, mine, because I hadn't believed in her growth. In that moment, I saw the genius of toxic love. It hands you the knife and asks why you're bleeding. But even in this fever dream, America loves a form. I had already filed an ethics complaint. I already had the notary. Back in my car, I dictated everything into a note titled, "Deposition of Tuesday Night," because storytelling is how we arrange our revenge without getting arrested. Later that week, I discovered the hidden cache, a separate phone she kept in the laundry cabinet like a saint's relic, a slim private universe with its own passcode that turned out to be his birthday. The messages were a scrapbook of euphemism, adjustment, bodywork, energetic medicine, each punctuated by a hotel address. She wrote, I feel free with you. And I heard a door slam on 20 honest years. The PI recommended I go public only when the board was ready to listen, and my lawyer had combed every comma. So I waited. We staged our ordinary life like understudies. Carpool, yard work, PTA. At the school fundraiser, the doctor donated a silent auction item called A Year of Health, and my wife clapped while I wondered what you get in the gift basket. The suburban conspiracy tightened like a belt. Friends who knew and didn't say. Acquaintances who suspected and recommended podcasts. Neighbors who saw the doctor jogging shirtless at dawn and called it inspiration. It wasn't an Illuminati, just a lot of people who liked feeling good. The American dream isn't a house, it's denial with a 2-car garage. By the time I rolled the projector into the hospital boardroom, Operation Copay had enough evidence to get a streaming deal. I felt less like a husband than a narrator for hire. That's the secret nobody tells you. When infidelity happens in suburbia, the cheater writes a romance and the betrayed writes the documentary. Both believe they're artists, but only one of us had the receipts. What came after wasn't tidy, but it had the logic of a courtroom drama where the camera finally widens. The board opened an inquiry. The doctor took a leave framed as sabbatical because even consequences get euphemisms. My wife moved into a friend's guest house and posted a selfie captioned "Healing," which is what people write when they've detonated a family and need strangers to agree it was destiny. Our kids learned fast. Our daughter said, "At least now the story makes sense," which is a heartbreaking thing for a teenager to say. Our son asked if promises are real or just content. The answer is both, and that's the problem. We did the American protocol, mediation, therapy, lawyers who use first names like their friends. The settlement read like a business breakup with visitation clauses. On paper, we were reasonable. In the heart, we were two actors reading stage directions we didn't believe anymore. She apologized for hurting the family, but not for the specific architecture of hurt, and I realized contrition in this country is mostly about optics and captions. I wanted revenge, but the adult kind, the kind that looks like wholeness on a Tuesday. So I took the gym membership I used to ignore, learned to saute vegetables without resentment, and taught my son how to change the oil so he'd have faith in things you can measure. Do I blame her? I blame the story we were sold, the one where desire can be optimized like a 401k, where the cure for ordinary sadness is a prescription with a side effect called someone else's hands, the one where cheating is slippery when it gets packaged as growth. In the final meeting with the board, the lawyer asked what outcome I sought. I said, accountability. And then I said a word I didn't expect, mercy. Because I'm tired of living at the angle of a knife. Mercy doesn't cancel revenge. It metabolizes it. It turns the heat down so the house doesn't burn with the people still inside. On a Sunday, months later, I took the kids to the farmer's market and ran into the doctor, dressed like a civilian, no white coat, just a man who looked smaller under the sky. He nodded. I nodded. He started to say about your wife, and I cut him off with a sentence I stole from a podcast. That's not your subject anymore. Then I bought peaches that tasted like a truce. That night my daughter played a song she wrote called Medical Advice, a parody ballad that was funnier than anyone our age deserves to be. We laughed so hard we startled the dog. Laughter wasn't forgiveness, but it was an upgrade from rage. If you want the moral, I don't have a clean one. I have a diagnosis. Betrayal dressed as medicine hurts in a special way because it tells you pain is therapy. I have a prescription. Don't outsource your marriage to a trend. And I have a prognosis. People heal unevenly. Families reassemble in foreign shapes. Love survives, but often under an alias. I still say the phrase cheating wife out loud sometimes, not to wound her in absentia, but to label the room correctly so I don't trip in the dark. It's a warning on a bottle. May cause dizziness, insecurity, a rational hatred of neon signs that say, breathe. In the secret court we all carry, I sentence us both to honesty. She can chase whatever version of self she wants. I can build a home that the truth would actually want to live in. America gave us language to market our pain and courts to count it. What we do with the remains is on us. So here's my closing statement, offered to anyone who thinks infidelity can be coded as wellness. If your growth requires a lie, it's just cheating in a lab coat. If a doctor prescribes secrecy, ask for a second opinion. And if someone sells you medical advice that looks like a hotel room, pay in cash. Then ask yourself why. Because in the end, revenge isn't destroying them. It's refusing to carry their story as your destiny. Mine is about a father, a family, and a life that remembered how to breathe without a neon sign telling it to.